Hello loves and welcome to today's video. It is the end of May and the end of Escape the Readathon. I had a fantastic reading month because I was so motivated by Escape the Readathon, and I finished 52 books in the month of May. That is 3,664 pages and 259 hours of audiobook. Now, I already covered 27 of those in a previous video because I knew by the time today rolled around, I wasn't going to remember half of them from the beginning of the month. So today I'm just going to cover the 25 books that I have read since then and I haven't talked about yet. I will leave a link in the description to the previous video if you want to see what I read in the first half of the month. So let's get started on the second half. As usual, I will go from the lowest rating I gave to the highest. The lowest rating that I gave out in the second half of the month was a 2.25, and that was to Carrie Mora by Thomas Harris. This is the same author who wrote the Hannibal series. It was about a cartel gold stash that was hidden and people are trying to track it down, and it's on the property of this woman who is hiding from ICE and the cartel and the immigration issues. I don't think were handled delicately or well in this book, and I also didn't find the narrative very compelling. So this ended up at a 2.25. I hope this is not an indication of how I'm gonna feel about the Hannibal series, which is on my TBR, but I haven't gotten to yet. Hopefully this one's just an airball from this author and his other work is better. Next are books at a 2.75. The first is Every Vow You Break by Peter Swanson. This is a thriller novel about a woman who is engaged or just got married to this very rich man. Her life is going to be very privileged going forward, but she's hiding a secret, and that's that she cheated on her fiance on her bachelor party night, and then on their honeymoon, the guy shows up. I hate cheating storylines. I hated this. Everyone in this book was pretty terrible as a person, which did not make me enjoy reading this. So this got a 2.75. I don't think the writing was bad, I just hated the content. Also at a 2.75 is Breaking Dawn by Stephanie Meyer, who I only just realized yesterday her name is spelled with an E and not an A. It took me 16 years to notice that, apparently. If you don't know what the Twilight Saga is about, it's about Bella and Edward, who are teenagers in love, except Edward is a vampire, and he is worried that if he turns Bella into a vampire, she will lose her soul. In this one, they get married, and that kicks off some horrifying events if you are me. Dear God, do I hate what this book's plot revolves around. Are you worried about spoilers for Breaking Dawn? Renesmee is a monster, even outside of the very creepy puppet. I hate pregnancy storylines. I hate when people are like, I don't want to be a mother, and then all of a sudden they get pregnant. They're like, actually, I do want to be a mother. Hate it, hate it, hate it. So 2.75. The nostalgia, great. The actual book, not great. Also, like, the climax of it, the build up to this war in the book, and the climax happens in like an hour of the audiobook, and the audiobook itself is 20 hours. So what do you mean we had 19 hours of build up for something that's gonna get resolved in an hour? Pacing was weird for me, so 2.75. Next are books at a 3.25. The first is Something She's Not Telling Us by Darcy Bell. This is by the same author who wrote A Simple Favor. This is about a woman whose daughter has been kidnapped by the woman her brother is dating. We go through all these different POVs to give the backstory as to why this girlfriend would have tried to kidnap the daughter, and also then trying to track down where the daughter is. Do I think there was anything objectively wrong with this book? No, I just wasn't interested by it. Again, another book where no one in this book was a good person, really. And not exactly the best handling of some very clear mental health issues for multiple characters, honestly. There were some interesting elements of the plot, but overall, not very compelling to me, so 3.25. Also 3.25 to Nita Okafor. This is about a little girl who is either cursed or blessed by death, that she can cause the death of everyone around her in a certain radius. And she uses this power to basically do medical assistance in dying. So it's about how the people in the different villages she visits treat her because they think she's cursed by death. I actually kind of listened to this twice because I missed a lot the first time around and had to listen to it a second time to be like, what did actually happen in this book? It was all right. I just don't think I understood what the book was trying to say, and it brought in both magical and science fiction elements, and I don't think either of those were well expanded upon. I think I maybe just didn't connect or understand this book enough to be able to rate it anything higher. Next, also at a 3.25, is We Could Be Rats by Emily Austen. This is about two sisters. One of them has attempted to commit suicide, and there are all of these attempt letters, and that's the first half of the book, and then the second half you get to know the sisters a little bit more and their relationship dynamic. I give this a 3.25 because I am not usually such a fan of slice of life like this. It's not my genre. Some of the dynamics between the siblings hit a bit too close to home that made this not enjoyable for me. So a 3.25 for personal reasons. Not discouraging other people from trying to read this book if you do like that kind of slice of life, reflection on childhood trauma and dynamics between siblings, but not for me. Next at a 3.5, we have An Academy for Liars by Alexis Henderson. This is about this woman whose life is kind of falling apart. I think she's getting divorced or something. And then she gets a mysterious phone call about an entrance exam for this mysterious academy. And then she goes there and they're doing magic to open gates or something. A lot of this book reminded me of Vita Nostra by Sergei and Marina Dichenko, and I loved Vita Nostra so much that I could not as much get into this one because of that comparison. I don't think this was as good, and I didn't like how much of the plot revolved around the main character being obsessed with this other student at the school who's like a TA. I don't think that relationship had enough of a build-up and a foundation to make sense as to why her entire life is revolving around this guy. And also, these people are arguably supposed to be adults, so them making all of these choices based on the person they barely know but are obsessed with just did not feel accurate. The book would have made more sense if they were younger, if they were actual teenagers. Read Vita Nostra instead. Next, also to 3.5, we have Fauna by Christiane Vadnois. These are a series of interconnected short stories surrounding, I don't know, some magical realism related to animals. Because these were short stories, there were some that I thought made more sense and were more enjoyable than others. Overall, I felt like they were using some very pretty words to not really say very much. I don't understand what the point of making sure that all of these stories were connected had, and I don't think I really connected to the character whose story this was, or was able to make any connections to a grander purpose to these stories. Fauna for me, 3.5. The writing was good. There were some very beautiful lyrical writings in this book. I just don't know what they were trying to say because it kind of obfuscated what was being said, if that makes sense. Next at 3.5, we have William by Mason Cole. This is about a couple, and the man in the couple has invented a robot using AI, and then it goes rogue. This one I was just kind of okay on for the majority of the book because it's very reminiscent of Megan. Then the plot twist at the end happened, and I won't spoil what that plot twist was, but that made me reconsider the entire rest of the book and really saved this one for me. So I had to give it like a lower rating, 3.5, because for the majority I was like, what about this is unique or interesting? But it was the plot twist at the end that got me. But overall, I don't think I was interested by the plot. Next books at 3.75. The first is Lady Castle by Delilah S. Dawson, which I didn't realize this was Delilah S. Dawson when I read this. It was only when I went to go log it for a prompt in Escape the Readathon that was like, read an author you've never read before. That was like, oh, this one doesn't count because I have actually read Delilah S. Dawson, like, a lot. This is about this medieval fantasy town where all of the men basically have gone off to battle this evil force, and then on the way back from battling the evil force, all except for one of the men is wiped out by a dragon, and their city has been cursed. The women are like, guess we have to do everything around here. The blacksmith takes over being king, and the women get shit done. I don't think that anything about this stands out to make it a 5-star obsessed with graphic novel, but the art style was cutesy, and I really liked the premise of it. Some of the ways that they end up dealing with the various creatures that attack their town were a unique spin and twist on what one would expect from a traditional fantasy. So I did overall enjoy this. So a 3.75, something quick to get done on a Sunday afternoon. I wouldn't not recommend it. Next is Everybody Wants to Rule the World Except Me by Django Wexler. I did read this as an ARC thanks to NetGalley, but it is published now if you are interested. This is the sequel to How to Be a Dark Lord and Die Trying. It is about our main character Devi, who is stuck in this time loop being told she has to stop the Dark Lord. And after 1,000 years of trying, she finally decides she isn't going to stop the Dark Lord, she's going to become the Dark Lord. So that's what the first book is about. In the second book, she now is the Dark Lord. Spoilers, kind of obvious from the title of the book. She has to try and broker a peace between the Wilders and the humans, using all of the knowledge, but also no longer wanting to have to reset to get things done. She's kind of grappling with her mortality and what having her decisions made permanent and not fixable is going to have to do to adjust her mindset. I give this a 3.75. I think there was some progress here in the writing in terms of toning down a bit of Devi's overt sexuality. Is a little overbearing in the first book. I think this manages to tone that down without ruining Devi as a character. Like, she doesn't feel like a different person. We're just maybe not focusing quite as much page time to those things. I did enjoy the plot. I love the characters in these books, but some of the way that the plot was written felt a bit disjointed. Without going into details and specifics for spoilers, there's this plot thread that they're researching, and they basically end up in this place, walk in, see a monster, and then walk right back out. And then we do not go back and figure out what was in there for like 150 pages. So I spent 120 pages like, are they gonna go back there? Like, that was really important to them to figure out what's going on. And they just saw a monster and decided, nah, not worth it, and we're not gonna go back to it. And then they did eventually go back to it, which made sense later on. Like I said, I like the plot and the characters. I just think that the writing was a bit disjointed for me in this one. Next, we have The Way of the House Husband, Volume 6 by Kosuke Uno. This is about a former Yakuza member who has retired and is now just a house husband to his lovely wife. The wife being basically my favorite character here. They follow him just like doing normal daily tasks, but with the intensity of someone who used to be in the Yakuza and also the scary appearance of someone who used to be in the Yakuza. These are fun, they're interesting, they're cozy. Sometimes I just want to turn my brain off. This is the kind of stuff that I say turn off your brain to enjoy. I got really excited at the beginning of this one because I thought we were going to get a long arc of something that was going to be really interesting, which is he tries to join basically like the homeowners association, and it's this like board of middle-aged housewives who are like, you don't have the skill to join us. And they're going to test him to see if he does have the skill to join them. And then they give him a series of tests to see if he can join them, and like it's floral arrangements and all this stuff. And I thought this was going to kick off like a long arc of him having to pass all of these tests. And then it was maybe a third of the book. And it just wrapped up nice and neatly very quickly. What this series is struggling to grasp me on is any like long-term engagement with it. Everything we introduce is resolved very quickly, and I do just kind of want to have some type of overarching thing to connect some of these stories a bit more. So 3.75 because I really liked that one specific section and then it ended too soon. Next is Out There by Katie Folk. This is a short story collection of like eerie sci-fi-ish short stories in the horror adjacent genre. This being a short story collection, some of them I like more than others, which is why short story collections usually end up somewhere in the 3s. I really liked any of the ones in this book that dealt with the blots, which are like AI robots who have been programmed basically to scam people and have infiltrated dating apps. So you never know when you're on a date from Hinge or whatever, whether you're actually meeting with an actual person. I liked the one with the like head growing through the floor. Other ones were just okay, like the guy who has to constantly moisturize his house, like with lotion. But overall, I really liked these. These felt like early Black Mirror, not that every horror sci-fi collection is Black Mirror, but reminded me a bit of that, as well as some like statements from Magnus Archives, which I love. So overall, I did really enjoy this collection, just, you know, some hits, some misses overall. Next are the books at a 4-star, and before anyone accuses me of cheating, this one I did not submit for Escape the Readathon, and that is Twisted Visions, The Art of Junji Ito. This is just an art book of Junji Ito's work over the years in like full color prints. So I really enjoyed this because I think the art of Junji Ito is really cool. I do wish there had been a bit more text in this one just to explain maybe some of his inspirations, to add context to the artwork, because some of them I recognize based on how much Junji Ito I've already read, but there were some that I'm like, that looks sick. Which collection is that from? And I don't think the book did a very good job of adding context. Overall a 4 because the art was really cool, but I wanted a bit more like insights. And speaking of Junji Ito, I also read Venus in the Blind Spot by Junji Ito. This is another one of his horror manga collections. The titular story is about this woman who sometimes men just stop being able to see her, and they think maybe that because she's an alien. That one was pretty interesting. I've read so much Junji Ito that I cannot tangle out which stories are which from which books in my head anymore. But overall, I liked the majority of the stories in here. I don't think there are any ones that were whiffs in this one, which there have been in some of the other ones. So overall a 4. Pretty good collection. Still enjoying reading Junji Ito when I need some manga, some more visuals, when my eyes start to blur from words on a screen. So Venus in the Blind Spot was one of the better ones. Next are the books at a 4.25. The first is Mother Thing by Ainsley Hogarth. This is about a woman whose mother-in-law committed suicide, and she has to deal with the fallout when her husband says that her mother-in-law is back from the grave, especially because she stole her mother-in-law's ring off her body. So this had some pretty cool horror elements to it. However, this book did include some plots around motherhood and babies, which I do not like in books. So most of it I enjoyed. I enjoyed some of the plot despite that happening. I don't know why I thought a book called Mother Thing would end up not being about motherhood, but I'd heard such good things about it, I had to give it a shot. Next at a 4.25 is The Original by Brandon Sanderson and Mary Robinette Kowal. This is a sci-fi futuristic novel where cloning and nanites and all those things exist, and a woman has been accused of killing her husband. So they've essentially cloned her and told her to track down her original self and kill her, and then she gets to stay alive. You follow this clone tracking down her original and trying to figure out why she murdered her husband in the first place. Short little sci-fi thriller, was a good time. not really long enough to have many complex thoughts on, but the plot was really interesting. I was intrigued. I was hooked. 4.25. Next, books at a 4.5, we have Gwendy's Button Box by Stephen King and Richard Chismar. This is about a little girl who's approaching a park one day and given this box where if she presses a button, something bad happens to someone else, but she gets to be her ideal self. So she's like a chunky child, and they're like, it'll help you lose weight and be beautiful. The plot of this was generally interesting. I think it avoided a lot of the pitfalls of Stephen King's writing from other books that I've read. Some of that was reined in a little bit, so overall a 4.5. I will likely continue this series. Next is Finna by Nino Supri. This is about two employees who work at like a furniture warehouse store, basically an IKEA, and it's basically known that sometimes dimensional rifts will open in the store, and when that happens, and if a customer goes through, it's good customer service to go retrieve them from the multiverse. So these two underpaid employees who are exes have to go through this dimensional portal to try and save a customer. I thought this was fun, a little bit of a parallel dimension story, and a commentary on like underpaid workers in capitalism. So overall, 4.5. I had fun with this one. Next is How Y'all Doing by Leslie Jordan. This is about the actor Leslie Jordan, a memoir of his life and different points of his career and his life in Hollywood, being a Southern boy who is very flamboyantly gay. He talks about how he became like pretty popular on Instagram and the internet during COVID because he just was who he was, and how different parts of his life raised him to be who he was. And it just had the feeling of sitting down with like an elderly relative and them telling you all the wild things that happened in their life. And I did listen to the audiobook, which is narrated by Leslie Jordan, so that one was pretty great. It was short, but really interesting. So 4.5. Next, we have books at a 4.75. The first is Come Closer by Sarah Gran. This is about a woman who starts having like mini blackouts and doing things that are really not who she is as a person, like smoking and shoplifting, and she comes to realize she might be possessed by a demon. This, I think, was like the perfect length. It was long enough to get its point across, but not so long that it felt like it was padding out some of the horror elements. It was more eerie, creepy than gross and gory, which I did really enjoy. I just didn't care for the dynamic between the husband and the wife, which is why it got a few points knocked down, but overall 4.75. I did really enjoy this overall. And then, finally, we have not one, not two, but 3 5-star books to talk about. The first is Confessions by Kene Minato. This is about a teacher at an elementary school whose daughter has recently died, and on the last day of school, she walks in and says, I know that some of you in my class are responsible for this death, and I am going to punish you for it. So you unravel what happened to this teacher's daughter, how the students may have been involved in the death of the daughter, and the absolutely unhinged things that she does to get her revenge. This I was rapt for. I listened to this start and finish. I think I was on reading sprints with Katie Colson at the time, so if you're a patron, you can actually go and watch my face as things are happening in this book. Oh my god, my jaw dropped at several times throughout it. Fucking phenomenal. Highly recommend Confessions. That's number 1 for the 5 stars. Number 2 for the 5 stars is A Dowry of Blood by S.T. Gibson. This is kind of a Dracula retelling, but from the perspective of his wives. It is about the first wife, how she was turned, and then how Dracula grows apart from her and brings in other spouses. Then eventually his downfall. But this was so beautifully written. I do love a Dracula retelling. I'm a vampire girly, okay? And overall, I loved this. I like a different perspective on Dracula. So 5 star for A Dowry of Blood. And the last 5-star, the best book that I read in the month of May, was Dungeon Crawler Carl by Matt Dinniman. Everyone is talking about this book right now. It is a lit RPG fantasy novel where aliens have descended on Earth and said that we're wiping out the majority of the population, but some of you will get to compete for the chance to live if you enter the dungeons and make it to level 10. So once you enter the dungeon, you are assigned skill levels based on your experiences in your life, and we follow Carl, who I think he ends up in the dungeon in just his underwear with his ex-girlfriend's cat, who's a higher level than him. And this is fun as he tries to go through this dungeon trying to keep this cat alive. And it's like a television show, so they're also trying to win sponsorships. Or lighthearted Hunger Games, kind of. People are still going to die, but it's very much more a comedy approach to it. I'm an RPG girly. I have played the Dragon Age games dozens of times each, except for Veilguard. I've only played that one 3 times, but it only came out 6 months ago, so you can forgive me for that. All that aside, I really love this. It really balanced making a male character funny without being annoying, in my opinion, like some other books I could mention. But I highly recommend Dungeon Crawler Carl if you like fantasy, but in a lighthearted, comedic way. Those are the books that I read in the second half of May and wrapped up Escape the Readathon with. Let me know in the comments down below what the best book you read in May was. Or leave the cat emoji for Princess Twinkletoes or whatever the cat in Dungeon Crawler Carl was. She's my favorite character. Our links in the description to my Instagram and my Goodreads if you want to follow along with what I read and get some previews throughout the month. Thank you so much for watching and have a great day.